So my name is Sarah Sexton. I am a Microsoft Technical Evangelist, and this talk is about developing for Xbox as an indie 2018, but time permitting, maybe I'll get to tell you about the Switch and the PlayStation as well. I am your host, Sarah Sexton. I am a software engineer at Microsoft. I have a lot of open source projects on github.com/Sarah Sexton. I'm a developer of games, mobile apps, websites, and software. I have a blog full of tutorials on how to do various things like chatbots and artificial intelligence at aka.ms/Sarah Sexton. And also, I'm right there. That's me, hanging out with Jesse Cox and D.B. Cooper, you know, the McElroy brothers. Cool people, great guys. I'm kidding. I don't actually know the brothers. So moving right along to getting on consoles as an indie in 2018. I have on my first bullet point, consoles are closed platforms with a little red asterisk next to it. And that is a little footnote that means, yes, consoles are closed platforms and they do demand quality over quantity, but some platforms are more closed than others. Some of you may recall that there's not really a whole lot of third-party software on Nintendo consoles. There are some really good ones like Shovel Knight, but like third-party stuff on Nintendo can be hard to come by because their standards are so high. And the reason their standards are really high, I'm sure many of you remember the bad game glut of the early 80s when just everyone was inventing games and all the games were garbage. And people got really burnt out on buying crappy video games. And they're like, no, I'm giving this done. I'm downtrodden, and I tried to play a game and it crashed, and I'm never going to do that again. And Nintendo basically single-handedly saved video games in the 80s by imposing very strict standards. So for that reason, Nintendo is a closed platform, and they have extremely high standards when you want to get on that console. And the good news and the bad news about getting on consoles is like, bad news, it's expensive and it's very difficult. But the good news is that for developing on the Xbox, we have just released the Creators Program, which means that anybody and anybody everywhere can develop on a retail Xbox. Later in my presentation, I'll show the difference between a dev kit Xbox and a retail Xbox. And there's actually a pretty stark contrast between the retail one and the dev kit one, and why it's actually a big deal that you can use a retail Xbox to develop with the Creators Program that was just launched right after E3, so it's quite new. We're going to set aside the Creators Program for Xbox, and one of the things we're going to talk about that's not the Creators Program is, I've got this little pin here for ID at Xbox. Raise your hand if you guys know about ID at Xbox. Way up high, real high. Okay. So to prove you are serious enough to get onto a console, there's a few things that you should think about doing. You should be a registered company or a sole trader. The little red star next to sole trader just means like a single individual. I'll talk about that on the next slide too. So, and I'll talk about how consoles are looking for like legal business entities or small business owners. So you're not Joe Schmo, the indie developer. You need to be like Sir Joseph Schmo, Esquire, small business owner. You want to be able to have secure authentication when you're submitting something to the Microsoft website. They often require you to have two-factor authentication, so you need to have a working cell phone next to you to receive the text and authenticate. You have a track record, another red star next to track record, which is what I'm going to talk about on the next slide. And also consider having a VAT, which stands for a value-added tax, or a tax number, which is kind of the same as like when you become a nonprofit, you get an EIN, or if you just have a tax number that's not your own social security number, then it makes you more credible. The big three, if I talk about the big three, that just means Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. And in the future years of 2018 instead of 2017, we're going to be focusing on the Xbox One and of course the Xbox One X, which is the name for Project Scorpio. The PlayStation 4 and I have PS Vita on there because they actually do some cross-play between PS4 and PS Vita, but you should mostly be focusing on PS4. If you want your game to work in Japan, go ahead and put it on the PS Vita. And for Nintendo, I talk about the 3DS and the Switch. As an indie, just if you are not like already in the middle of a Wii or Wii U project, don't get started now. Okay, so what do I mean by track record? Obviously the big three consoles accept developers who've never published a game to a console before, and that is because a much more accessible way to build a track record, like build up your reputation, is to submit mobile app games. Mobile apps definitely count as a solid track record. So let me survey the audience a little bit. Who here has their name in the credits of any game whatsoever? Way, way up high. Awesome, I'm really proud of you guys. That's so cool. So when I say track record, I mean you've got at least one shipped game and roughly 3 years of experience. But to quote the famous Captain Barbossa from Pirates of the Caribbean, them's more like guidelines than actual rules. It's more of a way to ward off the people that aren't serious. Because, like I was mentioning, console makers want a legal business entity, and I said that a sole trader means a single individual, and we can talk about corporations and partnerships. If you are a C Corp, that means that a corporation itself is a taxable entity, as opposed to an S Corp, where the individual is a taxable entity. And I'm sure that there are people in the audience who would be willing to explain more about this, or you can go look into it some more on your own. The other thing that's a little different from a corporation is a partnership. Is anybody here, do they already have their own limited liability partnership? All right, good job, good for you, buddy. There was one other guy I talked to who was already an LLP, and I was like, man, all right, you're on this, good job, go for it. Is anybody in an S Corp? Yeah, that one's a little more advanced. In the C Corp? Yeah, Tom, you're an S Corp? Way to go. All right. See, Tom's the marketing guy, he knows all this. So I'm here to bring you the good news and the bad news, and wake you up from being Joe Schmo indie developer and try to tell you how to be Sir Joseph Schmo Esquire, small business owner, to get on consoles. I already talked a little bit about secure authentication. Microsoft requires two-step authentication, usually with a cell phone for that. Nintendo only requires a single username and password to look at documents on their website, but you still have to encrypt any files that you upload. When I say the parity clause, does anybody know about parity clause already? Got one hand in the back. That's not a typo for the party clause. I do mean the parity clause. So the big three, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, they expect simultaneous release across all consoles, because as a platform owner, they have this attitude of, we don't want you to release on any other console before ours. We want to be the latest and greatest. Because in the mind of the console maker, if the features of your game are the same, then the release dates ought to be the same on all platforms. Otherwise, there should be unique features on the platform difference to justify a late arrival. But a workaround you can have for if you want to release to Xbox first and PlayStation second, and you just don't have the bandwidth on your team to do a simultaneous release across both. One workaround is just simply renaming the game the second time you release it, like Gold Edition. Almost all platforms have a job title or a point of contact called a Dev Account Manager, or a DAM, or a DAM. So just find out who your Dev Account Manager is and speak with them for more information on negotiation. Negotiation, we'll get into that a little bit later, how you and your time can be respected. So the process to submitting to a console begins with your name, your address, a website, and any games you've already released. So step 0, you already need to have games released if you're even thinking about getting on a console. You already need to have a website with screenshots and gameplay videos. Having an address, if you maybe rent a desk at a co-op, you can consider using your co-op's address. Or you can just use your address. It kind of depends on how private of a person you are. And your name. Hopefully you're not going through issues with your name, but I do know some people who'd try to get their name legally changed, and like that's a bureaucracy that takes a while. So I don't know, but I would think that like writing your name should be the easiest step in this process. Let's see. Also I forgot to mention that the current industry trend, I believe, is that certain AAA games will come out on consoles first and PC second. I know that's true for a few, and I thought that releasing on a PC would be a lot easier than a console for reasons I'm about to get into, but if you are a AAA team, then I guess you have the resources. Speaking of resources, let's talk about the expensive items. Yeah, so if you're Joe Schmo indie developer, you better have like at least $4,000 just lying around, because it is there's two things here. One's required, one's optional. Required is errors and omissions insurance when you put your game on a console. If someone has a seizure while they're playing your game, you have to put an epileptic seizure warning at the beginning, and that way the insurance protects you from them like filing any claims about you for causing a seizure. Same thing goes for if someone claims that a criminal committed a violent act because of your violent game. This insurance can also help protect you from that as well. It's called errors and omissions insurance. It covers intellectual property and copyright violations, etc. And kind of the bad news, using an insurance broker, the cheapest E&O insurance you might find would still be to the tune of around $2,000. The optional one is foreign country rating boards. I think this audience knows about the ESRB, that's the Entertainment Software Rating Board in the United States. The one in Europe is called Pan-European Game Information, also known as PEGI. So to release in foreign countries, like if you want to hit all the English-speaking places, not just America, like you want to go for England too, to release in foreign countries, your game must be rated by the official ratings board, the Pan-European Game Information. That also costs roughly $2,000 depending on the country. Let me tell you something that a lot of people don't usually think about. When you submit your game to the ESRB and to PEGI, those boards, they don't have time to actually play your game. They're looking at screenshots and watching video footage that you upload with your submission. So to that end, keep that in mind. You want to actually send them the most provocative video footage of your game. That way they need to see it at its worst so that they can place it at its best. You want to be upfront and honest and say, like, these are the most provocative parts of my game in context, and I believe that this should be rated T for teen and not M for mature. So don't try to gloss things over, don't try to hide it. Like, you need to have full good faith about this and be on the honor system. Like, really be like, if there's some violent parts or if there's some, I don't know, M-rated parts, just be upfront about that so that you don't cause any unpleasant surprises later. Do I have any questions so far? Everything making sense? Awesome.
Actually,
yes.
How do you get in contact with these places?
You would go through the development programs of the console. Like, they will help walk you through that.
Cool.
I'm going to get into that in just a couple of slides. No worries. So I watched a really great talk yesterday. It was about like how to pitch like a business pitch, kind of like on Shark Tank, and how to try to attract funding to your project. And one of the things people don't think about is like when they stroll on the stage for Shark Tank and they're like, I want $300 million for 10% of my company, and you should give it to me for these reasons. And like these huge numbers, and I'm still sitting at my desk being like, how do I even get there? I'm at 0 and they're at like 90. How do I even get to 60? So these are startup costs that are expenses just to get your studio up and running. If you want to record video footage, or if your artist needs a Photoshop license to do the art for your game, you're going to need to buy Photoshop and Adobe Premiere or whatever video, like any video editing software worth its salt probably has a price tag on it. A lot of the times you can get Unity for free. I just wanted to throw that one up there just in case. Another thing you have to think about is licenses. Just for example, the Windows Developer's license is $19 for an individual, which is like really cheap. I don't know why they put it at 19, it's not even 20. and it's $99 for a company. Another example is the Apple developer's license is $100 every year. That's an annual expense. And you don't necessarily think about this, but if you're trying to get all your iPad and iPhone mobile games out there, you have to pay that every year. You also have to maintain your game's domain name. Like if you want to reserve a website URL, you have to pay for hosting. That's another monthly or annual fee. It's just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You want some hardware. You want to have USB and video cables. You want to have an HDMI capture box to have a video capture device for making a trailer for your game. That's another $60 to do that. You should consider hiring a production team or professional services for skills that are outside of your zone of genius. I'm sure everyone in this room is either a programming genius or a design genius, but I am definitely not like a certified public accountant. I don't even prepare my own taxes. I just, like, there's a lot of things where I'm like, that's outside my zone of genius, I'm not even gonna try. So consider hiring a lawyer to help with those legal fees of protecting your intellectual property. Your game's not gonna make any money if you get cloned right out the gate and your intellectual property gets stolen. So consider a lawyer to help you protect your intellectual property. Consider a marketer. If you make the best game in the world and no one knows it exists, you're not gonna make any money. So consider hiring a marketer. Also consider a producer to help keep your timeline in check. Watch your burn down rate. Oh man, indies make the most rookie mistakes, and I totally would too if I didn't have the influence of all these smart people in my network and learn from the mistakes of others. But I just recently came across someone who was giving a talk about how like she calculated her savings so that her burn down rate was she was gonna run out of money right when her game launched, and she's like, yes, game launched, I did it. And then like a month went by and she's like, I still have rent. Another month went by and she's like, I have rent again. This is bad. I'm not making any money on this game yet. It launched, but where's my money? And then month 3 came around and she's just like eating her toenails mixed in with her ramen. And she's like, oh my God, I've made a horrible mistake. I didn't leave myself any cushion or padding or slush fund after the launch of my game. The E&O insurance is on here because that's another cost. And I also mentioned workspace and utilities because it's a really fun way to collaborate with your team and get that like unplanned simultaneous brainstorming sessions when you guys are like physically together in a room. So renting a desk at a co-op space is often a good idea. So when you're hiring your lawyer and your marketer and your accountant and your producer and you're like, thanks mom and dad for those thousands of dollars you're loaning me. Just remember that if you can't see the end of the road for your game plan, then neither will they. So do yourself a favor, do them a favor, and like really think it through. Oh, and maintaining your game's like domain name. I'm talking about like keeping your website up to date. I'm gonna tell a story about somebody who's like, hey Sarah, can you talk to the guys at ID at Xbox because I submitted my game and I don't think they've looked at it. It's been like 2 weeks. Can you talk to them? And I was like, sure, buddy, you're my friend. I'll go ping them. Send me the website for your game, and I'll tell them that, like, hey, you should take a second look at this. I really want to vouch for these guys. And he's like, oh, okay, my web developer says that'll be ready next Tuesday. And I'm like, excuse me? You're like, you submitted to ID at Xbox, but your website's not up? He's like, yeah, is that a problem? Yes, it's a problem. Okay, fine, all right. All right, it's gonna be ready next Tuesday, calm down. Send me your screenshots and I'll just like upload those as an attachment to the email so I can be like, check out this rad game, here's some video footage, here's some screenshots. And he's like, oh, all right, here's an email attachment full of concept art for the characters. I'm like, this is concept art, these are not screenshots. I asked for gameplay footage. He's like, oh, we're still working on that. You know, it's like not really ready yet. And I'm just like, man, why are you telling me to talk to the ID at Xbox people when you don't even have your website up? Just don't do that to me. So when you apply for the ID at Xbox program, try to have your ducks in a row. If you are accepted, you will receive 2 Xbox One dev kits and a Unity Pro license for free. However, this process may take several weeks or months because there is an overwhelmingly large number of applicants. Sometimes, this is another fun story, people don't fill out the form correctly. Like they'll have a typo in their email address, so Microsoft cannot contact them. Message not received. So make sure you spell your email address right. Make sure you spell your name right. And if you happen to know someone who has the ear of ID at Xbox or a Microsoft employee who's willing to stick their neck out like your friendly technical evangelist, don't waste their time if you don't have any screenshots for your game. But also consider reaching out on a monthly basis to Microsoft, like send them gameplay videos, send them screenshots, send them a PC build, just like be your own best advocate, like talk to them. They will probably love the enthusiasm. So walking yourself through the process is available at www.xbox.com/developers/ID. It'll take you to a web page, and if you just want to get started on the creators update, there's a link that says learn more in that section of the web page about halfway down. So one of my suggestions for if you are still brand new and starting out, try the creators program so you can get your game out there. You don't have to have any certificates. You don't really even have to apply or submit. You can just like open up Visual Studio on your development machine. It has to be a universal Windows platform app, so you need to have a Windows 10 computer to do it, but you can just like hook it up to your retail Xbox and you can just start making stuff like in Visual Studio right there. And like get a feel for it, use the creators program to get a feel for what it's like to develop for a console. And then once you have like solid ground under your feet, you feel like you've got a feel for it, then try to apply for ID at Xbox program, either with like the same game you made in the creators program, or apply for a completely different game. But it's totally acceptable to build a game for the creators program and then like submit it to the ID at Xbox program. Does anybody have any questions? Am I being clear about like the distinction between the Xbox creators program and the ID at Xbox program? Okay, ID at Xbox, those are the guys who are at GDC. They've got the big swanky booth upstairs with the bar and the games kiosks. They're the ones that you don't want to waste their time. You really need to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. I would like to observe a moment of silence for the Xbox Live indie games from 2008 to 2017. The reason that this program is being sunsetted is because it was for the Xbox 360, and Microsoft has been working extremely hard over the past couple of years to converge the Windows 10 development platform and the Xbox One development platform using UWP, which is Universal Windows Platform. We want, as the name implies, we want a universal Windows platform. And with the creators update and like with really focusing on Xbox One and sunsetting Xbox 360, we really want to actually be able to say we have a universal Windows platform. It works for Xbox and the computer. That goes to say that all console makers will want something special. And this is a fun topic to talk about. So when you reach out to your dev account manager, ask them, like, what is your company trying to highlight right now? A couple of years ago, Xbox was trying to highlight the Kinect. So if you had a really cool Kinect game where like you moved your body on the screen while you were holding the controller, I saw this really awesome game. I think it's my favorite example of like the silhouette of your body was seen by the Kinect, and like you would stand in front of the screen and the silhouette of your body showed up and would highlight hidden platforms. And then you would use the controller to like control your little guy and like jump on those hidden platforms. So you had to like move and jump at the same time. And if your shadow moved away from the screen, then you'd like fall because the platform would go invisible again. So like incorporate cool uses of the technology that that company is trying to highlight. Let's see, right now, so that was like, Kinect was a couple of years ago. A more modern example would be crossplay, or the ability to play between the Xbox One and the PC. I know Minecraft is a good example of crossplay, even cross-platform play between the Switch and PCs and Xbox. So Minecraft is really pushing for crossplay right now. I know that the PlayStation really wants to push anything that uses PlayStation Plus, for example, cloud multiplayer. And for the Nintendo Switch, anything that uses that HD Rumble Pack or locally based social play, where you can just like snap off a Joy-Con and hand it to your pal and like kick the kickstand out and be like, all right, let's sit down and play Snipper Clips. Anything that uses like that dual joystick controller, the HD Rumble Pack, like Nintendo is gonna be like, yes, we want this. So I was going to dive a little bit deeper into the Xbox Live Creators Program, give you guys a chance to take a picture of the slide if you want that link, because I mean it, like any developer can build an Xbox Live enabled UWP game for Xbox One and Windows 10. UWP, like I said, Universal Windows Platform App. If you're an indie, if you're a student, if you're a small game developer, you can submit apps to the Xbox Store with only 4 steps, which I'll show on the next slide. And if you know a game that would be great to highlight on this platform, tweet me, I'll get it in the right hands. I know the guy. So the 4 steps, I'm gonna go back to that slide in a second, but the 4 steps is like step 1, create a Microsoft account. If you already have a Microsoft account, you're set. A Microsoft account is anything that ends at hotmail.com, at live.com, at outlook.com, at microsoft.com. So like if you already have like a Skype or an Xbox, Outlook, Live, Hotmail, you already have a Microsoft account. So moving on to step 2. Enroll in the Dev Center developer program. Like if you ever built a Windows 8 and Windows 8.1, Windows 10, Windows Phone app, you are already enrolled in the Dev Center developer program. I know I am. It was like $19 one time. So if you're already in there, then just move right along to step 3. Apply to join the preview for Xbox Live Creators Program. So these slides are these are pre-E3, so you can basically ignore all the rest of that stuff. It's not really in preview anymore, like it's here. And the program is ramped up and spaces are already made available, so just apply. And step 4, read through the documentation to learn how to integrate Xbox Live into your game. You're good, move on. So those are the 4 steps. I know the guy, his name is Greg. If you have a game that will be highlighted on the platform, if you think it's great, then just find me, follow me, I'm Celia on Twitter, and let's start having that conversation. So I'm gonna take you back in time to GDC this year. So these slides, you can find them in the GDC vault, but this is what they presented in 2017. The Xbox Live Creators Program is an open program. Any developer can build Xbox Live enabled UWP game for Xbox One and Windows 10. Simple, open, it's ready for any game. You have standard store policies. You don't need to worry about licensing. The configuration is easy. You self-publish it when you're ready for it to play. And you have the right-sized feature set for any game to access Xbox Live. Beam interactive live streams it's kind of similar to Twitch streaming. Beam interactive live streams let people watch you play and let you chat, but it's like specially honed to the Xbox experience. The same goes for game hubs. These are publisher-managed experiences to draw players into a community and just start having that side chat while you play the game, or while you stream your game. Maybe you're going to do an extra life marathon and you want to stream your game for 24 hours and have people be able to chat with you while you do it, send you encouraging messages. You can start streaming and using game hubs to share and celebrate game media and news. Player-managed experiences create a community around any common interests in the games that they love. You can join a club. Or you have party chat. Low latency, high quality voice and text chat keeps friends together, even in non-multiplayer scenarios. These are some common Xbox features. And I love this slide because it has the HoloLens on it, and I am a HoloLens developer. So you can access over 400 million devices. Any access to a Windows 10 PC gets you the entire Xbox One family of consoles, because that is your target market. Yes, so any Windows mixed reality UWP game is also a viable option. Obviously, when you're developing for mixed reality, you don't want to have the development experience of I'm holding a controller, I'm controlling a guy on the screen. You want to have it be, I'm wearing an alternate reality headset, pair of goggles on my head. I need to be able to reach out and touch stuff. It needs to be in 3D. I love the HoloLens. It's the way of the future. It's going to be rad. Free world-class gaming platform adventures at scale. Obviously, if you're developing for Xbox, one of your main target hitting points is going to be leaderboards. And we've got some game DVR, connected storage, and accessible chat and more. These are some more standard Xbox features. And here's how you get started. Go ahead and take a picture of this if you want, or just take a picture of the slide I already had before. But you are invited to join the Insiders program. So like this was back at GDC, this was pre-E3. Now that it's post-E3, you can begin shipping your title on the Xbox Live Creator Program like as soon as you go home. That I haven't actually tested that link. It might be out of date, but I know that the one on the other slide is fine. And if you want to get even more involved, the Xbox Live Creator Program is open source. How many of you guys have GitHub accounts? Yeah? Way high. Come on, way up in there. Yes, GitHub accounts. Their APIs, their tools, their engine plugins are available on github.com today. And you can see the user voice page at this link. User voice is like, hey, I have a negative piece of feedback that I want heard. I want my voice heard. I have a positive piece of feedback and I want my voice heard. That's what user voice is. It's ak.ms/xblcpuv to promote your ideas, but it's open source. Like you can go submit a pull request to GitHub and be like, I have a pull request on the GitHub of the Xbox Live Creators Program. I'm all that. Do I have any questions about Xbox? Yes, Leo.
Yeah. About the email, creating an email to create an account. Would my personal email, I think I can use my personal email to access my account. It's a Gmail account.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend creating a more professional account just for the communication to Xbox ID and everybody?
So if you're just worried about like @gmail.com and then be like, oh, it's Google. No. Don't even worry about it. You can link your Gmail account to also serve as your Microsoft account.
Mm-hmm.
We're not dogmatic about that. We have no grudges. There's no ill will there. However, if your email address is like XOXO Knight Rider 420 XOXO @gmail.com, that's unprofessional. My first email address was like candycoatedpoptart@hotmail.com. I'm like, I'm not gonna use that anymore. Whatever is your personal preference, as long as you can check it frequently.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions about Xbox before moving on? Yes, right here.
I might just misunderstand something, but what exactly is the difference between the Idea Xbox program and the
Creators?
the Creators program?
Yes. Actually, I'll talk about this right now because I think that I did not mention the whole dev kit story. That was probably something I should have mentioned when you apply for ID at Xbox, you get 2 dev kits.
Okay, so that's the only difference between the two?
No. Gotta let me finish. So I was just going over my slides with Patrick from PlayStation yesterday, and Patrick, can you tell the story about the dev kit and how it had to be like you had a LAN party with your dev kit?
Yeah, so the difference between like a retail and a dev kit is when you actually are using the like dev kit, or at least on Xbox, once it's been enabled for dev kit, it has to be connected through LAN to an actual network so that it can be constantly be pinging and making sure it's not being used as a retail model. And that's because you're now using like proprietary software and other tools that are specifically like meant for them. So both Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo use this. So back when I was doing development for the Wii U, we had the Wii U in another room and like a 100-foot Ethernet cable like running all the way back to like our development PC. Mm-hmm. Then at PlayStation, all of our dev units are still hardwired into like what's called the dev net, which is the wall. Nothing's wireless because for security reasons.
Yeah.
So that's a key difference.
Yes, so that's the idea at Xbox. You need a dev kit which has to have wires. There's no wireless connection on there. And the standards are much higher, which I think I'm still going to get into in the next few slides. Toward the end of the talk, I'll talk about developer experiments. Do you have that kind of time? You gonna stick around at 2:30?
Yeah.
Okay. I will get there. For now, let's talk about the PlayStation. Sony demands an attached file proving that you are a registered company. I think this may change. And an attached file describing the game you want to develop, for example, a game design document. Raise your hand if you're familiar with game design documents. Okay, if you're not, get on that. Just do an internet search for game design document. These are like 80-page long magnum opus, like Google Drive documents that your entire team is contributing to, and it's like everything in your game, everything. PDFs are preferred, and your response time may vary. I've heard stories that the response time from Sony is really fast. It's only 1 to 2 weeks because they have a really good automation system of like responding to emails right away. But of course there are exceptions. And I've also heard from my friends that Sony generously doles out dev kits. I come from the Chicago indie developer community, and we have, Chicago's the Windy City. We have the Indie City Co-op. And like there's just like PlayStations strewn about the place, just littered. Everybody can get one. You want to go to www.nohurdlesjustgames.com. Also, you can barter for what you need. I'm talking about timing, exclusivity, length, marketing, and funding. So when you're talking to your dev account manager and they say, we need you to ship by Christmas and you need to be exclusive to PlayStation for a year, you could be like, no, I'm shipping in summer, not Christmas, and I'm only gonna be exclusive for 6 months. And then you get to barter, you haggle, you have the back and forth. Marketing and funding is exactly what it sounds like. And for the pub fund, that means that Sony does not own your intellectual property rights, which is nice. And you can get an advance on sales/royalties in exchange for limited platform exclusivity. NoHurdlesJustGames.com. That's something a lot of people don't think about, is like, how long do I have to be exclusive? What time of the year do I release? Let's talk about Nintendo. As an indie, start focusing exclusively on Switch and or 3DS. Like I mentioned, don't start on Wii or Wii U now. You can apply for Nintendo's self-publishing program, and these are actually cross-platform completely, but these are the most common approaches to developing games, just for your information. C and C++ works on every console. So does Unity and Unreal. Unity exports to every console. You can develop in DirectX on the Xbox and OpenGL on all others. So I would highly, highly recommend Unity if you want to develop in C#, and Unreal 4 is the go-to if you want to develop in C++. Nintendo will loan out dev kits for 1 year. You are essentially borrowing it from Nintendo. And there is an opportunity to buy refurbished dev kits in addition to what you are loaned for about the tune of $800, maybe $900. Their website is www.developer.nintendo.com. Okay, now I'm going to actually get into the nitty-gritty of console development environment details. Feel free to take pictures of the next couple of slides for your notes. So the software development kit, or SDK, is downloaded from each company by visiting those URLs I just called out, and you install it to your development machine. When you get a dev kit, the dev kits are connected over a local area network. Remember, it has to be hardwired, no wireless. You use Visual Studio on all of them, which is really nice for Microsoft. Visual Studio integration allows deploying to consoles and loading files from your PC over that network without explicitly making and publishing or pushing builds. So that's how you do that. And there are tools available for profiling bottlenecks on Xbox and PlayStation platforms. You can go ahead and look up PIX, Dev Tuning and Debugger. Don't worry about that until you're actually experiencing these bottlenecks. That's more advanced. And additional tools are included for final packaging, which can be cumbersome for these reasons. When you are designing for consoles, consider the following. Naming and branding guidelines must be adhered to for release. That means you have to have proper names for all the different buttons. If you're releasing for the Xbox, you want to say jump is X. If you're developing for the PlayStation, you have to say jump is square or circle, because the buttons are different layouts. So proper names for buttons, proper usage of capitalization. If you've got old McDonald and it's a capital M and a capital D, you can't go typing McDonald with a lowercase d. You have to really, really be an English major to the nth degree about this capitalization punctuation stuff. You just can't be sloppy. You have to be really professional. You import visual elements, I meant to say important visual elements must be within TV-safe margins. Kind of the same thing for these PowerPoint slides. Like sometimes the margins get cut off to one side or the other side. So think about that, it has to be TV safe. So like stay away from the extreme edges of the TV, like keep it within a safe margin. User management and controller assignment edge cases must be thoroughly tested. What that means is that if you are playing with a controller and it comes unplugged, you have to react to that. Your game has to react to that. For example, maybe I would have the whole game pause and an overlay would come on the screen and say controller X has been disconnected. Your game has to fail gracefully. Write that one down in your notes if you're taking them. Edge cases means fail gracefully. An older example would be if you are writing a save file to a memory card and the memory card comes out, then that means that your game cannot crash. So that's an edge case where you have to fail gracefully. Requirements must be met for load times, warnings, and other issues related to maintaining general consistency on each particular platform. You know, Joe Schmo, indie developer, would be like, I just want to make games that make me happy, and if it crashes, I know how to fix it. I just hit Control-Alt-Delete, and I know the secret Easter egg shortcut key to get it right. No. Sir Joseph Esquire must be a professional and have foolproof development. So you have to meet the requirements. Additional items like achievements, saves, leaderboards, general like peripheral game development, like, I don't know, accoutrement generally require a fair amount of implementation time. So like I said, be careful about don't run out of money as soon as you launch, or else you'll be eating toenails with your ramen. Also, don't run out of time before you've had a chance to implement achievements and leaderboards and like save states. So they say that 90% of the work of making a game goes into the last 10% of the process. Extremely true. You get your whole game down, you got like level 1, level 2, level 3, you've got your start screen, your game over screen, you have the pause button working. It all works, and like your jump feels really good, and you can run and switch gravity around and run on the ceiling, and you've got leaderboards installed, and it's all great. And then you're like, oh, wait, how do these achievement things work? Like, what even is that? How does it talk to the Xbox? Leave yourself time to figure that stuff out. This is my second to last slide. Get in touch with your community. So like I said, I come from the Chicago area, and there's tons of great, very supportive community get-togethers. You can start or join the International Game Developers Association chapter in your city. If you don't already have a chapter, you can make it. If the console makers don't believe you have a good game, they will not be quick to get back to you. If you show great promise as a developer, all 3 of these companies have opportunities to loan or give you their dev kit for free. So don't be like my friend who's like, hey Sarah, how come I did Xbox isn't getting back to me? It's been 2 weeks and you don't have screenshots and your game isn't done. Don't be that guy, you know? Like, it's kind of a we'll call you, don't call us situation. Yes, so in Chicago, we've got the Indie City Games Meetup, Chicago Unity 3D. We have the Indie City Co-op with weekly Friday indie lunches, really fun get-togethers. I personally am a co-founder of the Voxels, Chicago's Women in Game Development, and there's also the Indie Video Game Developer Association in Chicago. I don't know, anybody from Chicago? Let me see Ross and Tom. Okay. Oh, hey, we got a guy in the back. All right, hi buddy, hi new friend. Write these down. I haven't seen you around, so I know you're not coming to these things.
Yeah, I'm not living there now.
Okay, you just from there?
Yeah.
All right, well if you come back, you know, look us up. I'm gonna shamelessly plug the Voxels, She Builds Games. That's my last slide. But first of all, if you wanna go to the GDC Vault, look up these talks. I've kind of only scratched the very surface of actually developing on Xbox as an indie, but you can reach more gamers through the Xbox accessibility features on Xbox One. I really love Able Gamers and what they're doing with accessibility features. Like, huge shout out to them. Yes, that's me clapping for Able Gamers. Windows holographic rendering. I said I'm a HoloLens developer. Think about, like, it's the same platform. It's just UWP. It's just Windows 10. Think about, like, making a cool game in 3D. Extending your game's reach with that broadcasting on Beam. It's a lot like Twitch streaming. You can find a way to market your game that's really easy. Also, like, this should be like way up at the top of the list, but the converged Windows Store for Windows and Xbox. One of the complaints was that, like, oh, they call it the Universal Windows Platform, but like, it only works on PC, it doesn't even work on Xbox. Like, it worked on PC and phone, but it didn't work on Xbox. Xbox was like out there in the outhouse. So now, meet the converged Windows Store for Windows and Xbox. Big deal, real big deal. That's why you have to upgrade your computer to Windows 10 and upgrade your Xbox to Xbox One. And like anybody who's still holding out on Windows 7, Xbox 360, they do not get the benefits of the new Microsoft. And game mode and the evolution of cross-platform UWP game development, just some more slides you can take a look at. I'm the co-founder of the Voxel, Chicago's Women in Game Development. I run a blog called shebuildsgames.com where I interview female game developers and have inspiring stories where I highlight the positives of being a woman in game development because we kind of need that. I'm a huge fan of Girls Make Games, an annual summer camp. There's the I Make Games YouTube channel where it's kind of the same thing as She Builds Games, but like instead of reading transcriptions of interviews, you can actually watch trailers and like watch videos of women talking about their games. Gamesareforeveryone.com, I'm a huge fan. Play for Change Lab at DePaul.edu, like any like educational games, games for change, serious games, social impact games. I really think we need more of those. Big shout out to Global Game Jam and Able Gamers. And huge thanks to my coworker Dave Voiles and Patrick Owens here in the audience. Thank you for helping out with the dev kit stories. And to this Gama Sutra article, How to Get on Consoles as an Indie, and gamedevblog.com/60second shooters. Some more links you can check out. Those are from when I did this talk in 2015. I didn't update these, but now I'm thinking about 2018. So thank you very much. I am your host, Sarah Sexton, and thank you for your time, and I really appreciate your presence here today.